Hey everybody, Professor Snart checking in here as we get out of Unit 1 and into Unit 2 in our online creative writing course. So I'm in our course here, so I'm going to click into the due dates, which is something that obviously you want to be doing on a regular basis to see what's coming up. But I always recommend not just looking at the very next due date, but maybe taking a look and scanning ahead to see what kinds of not what kinds of due dates, but sort of the spacing between the due dates that we have going on. I think I've kept it pretty regular in terms of when the due dates occur, but obviously there are certain units that we might spend a little bit more time on, so due dates end up being a little bit staggered in there. But it's good to know kind of how they play out for a few weeks or a few units in advance instead of always just thinking that one unit ahead. So we now get into Unit 2, which has us thinking a little bit more generally about writing and what it means to be a writer, and kind of thinking in that writerly frame of mind. The due date then is Thursday, January 23rd, and I'm just going to click into the unit itself here to review what we're looking at. So there's an initial reading from our Creative Writer's Handbook, some of the introductory material in there. I'm asking you to look at some of the material that's in our course here called the Rules of Creative Writing. It's not within the unit itself because I think it really is sort of this umbrella set of ideas for the course as a whole. So it's actually in the main course menu that you can click into. That we might actually return to a number of times. So this is sort of cool. It's actually a PowerPoint, which is no big thing for anybody, but it is playable or clickable by you, so you can move through the slides, and then there's also narration built into it, so you can play the PowerPoint and then move through the slides, but also click the little speaker icons throughout to hear yours truly making some various comments about some of the ideas within the slides themselves. Like I said, it's not buried in a unit here. These are really kind of overarching ideas for the entire course, regardless of what genre of creative writing we're working in. These kind of basic fundamental ideas really pertain to all of them. So one of the things that I certainly look for in terms of me reading your work, but also that I would encourage you to look for in your own work, but also when you provide feedback to people once we get to that phase of the course, is really the application of these rules, or did people kind of veer off in some directions we might not want to go in. So these can provide a really nice roadmap that guides your own writing, but also your own, the feedback that you give to people in terms of really pointing to areas for improvement if people have broken the rules. Oh my gosh. It's not that serious, but these are, I think, some pretty foundational principles that we can point back to if you're looking for a way to express maybe an area of weakness in a short story or whatever you're reading, and you can't quite put your finger on it. Maybe it actually goes back to this set of really kind of basic ideas that we want to keep in mind. So you can maybe reference back to these, not only for your own writing, but also for doing feedback. So this occupies a very small part of Unit 2 here, and looking at the slideshow is not going to take you all of 20 minutes, if that. But it's really, really important as a set of overarching principles for the entirety of our course. So be sure you really invest some time in looking at the slideshow and getting the ideas, but also sort of reflecting back on yourself as a writer, and have you fallen into some of the traps that I've pointed to in the slideshow? Are there ways of thinking about the ideas that I've presented that really make sense for the kind of writing that you want to do? So you can kind of personalize them in a sense, make them make sense for you. And then there's a couple of discussion board assignments, relatively short. The first is framing a memory, which is a really good exercise in thinking about how writers take basic facts of life. In this case, it happens to be stuff that's happened to you, so you're not struggling trying to invent something. That's the reason we do that, the memory part of it. But of course, you want to think about like what is the significance of that, and can you tell that story or relate that memory in a way that then has significance for somebody else. In other words, it matters to you because it happened to you. Can you then write that down in a way that I care about it, or some reader who doesn't know you cares about it, because it has some intrinsic literary value now, or there's some meaning or some aspect of interest that would really get us involved in the story, even though we might not know you personally. So you can see that big distinction. That piece of writing that might be very meaningful for you or for your mom or your brother or some other person who already has a personal connection with the events, that is really not what we're going for, right? You're trying to have an impact on somebody who has no personal connection with you or with the events that happened. Can you take the reality of life, it sounded corny, but you get it, real everyday things, and make them into something creative, something literary, something that I want to read, even though I might not know you personally. Again, sounds easy enough, but that whole process is creative writing if you think about it. The next one, the next discussion board here is a Why I Write discussion board. I actually had to switch out an older assignment because the link no longer worked for various legal publishing copyright reasons. But anyway, an aspect of the writing life that you'll probably run into sooner rather than later. But anyway, there's a good exercise here, I think, that has us looking at a random set of YouTube videos that are collected by the National Writing Project, basically just asking people like, why do you write? And the invitation then is for you to watch one, or at least one, but hopefully more of some of these videos. Maybe you'll find writers you recognize, maybe not, maybe people who just look kind of weirdo and interesting. You know, it doesn't really matter. But watch those videos, watch how people respond to that question of why I write, and then do two things. First, respond to the question yourself. Why do you write? And then try to also talk about what about some of those videos really struck you as insightful or wrong, if you want to challenge some of it. But the only thing I ask is that you be as specific as possible. So you tell us what video you watched, but also the time frame or the time marker where somebody said a certain phrase that you either really felt resonated with you positively or negatively. And you don't need to separate that out, the why I write and here's my response to the videos, into two totally separate things. In fact, ideally, you want to kind of marry them together so that you're talking about someone else's ideas and your own ideas in this fluid, kind of cohesive and unified piece. The other thing that I'm going to invite you to do here, and maybe throughout the course, is instead of writing this down, if you'd prefer to record yourself the way I'm doing now, and then post that video in the discussion board or link it to YouTube or whatever, I think that would be a great way to have people respond to this question. Now, what you don't have to do is first write it out and then sit in front of the camera and try to read it to us. I would do this. I would watch my videos, make a couple notes to myself just on whatever, kind of, very informal. Turn the camera on and just kind of glance at the notes and talk to us for a little bit. Doesn't need to be scripted, doesn't need to be super formal, super professional, none of that kind of stuff. But I think it would be really cool if a bunch of people got in the habit maybe of doing these video things instead of always doing text-based things. Of course, we won't lose the text-based part of our class, but it'd be really neat if there was some of the video dynamic, not just coming from me all the time, but coming from other people in the class. The other thing that you could think about doing is, because there's the requirement to respond to a couple of other student posts, is think about doing the response as a video. That might be even easier because it's probably going to be shorter, but you also don't have to coordinate as many ideas or threads as you might in doing your initial post or your response post. Replying to others might be a little bit easier to do kind of off the cuff like I'm doing here. Anyway, I would do like a step-by-step of how to do that kind of thing, but the fact is everyone's kind of technical configuration is different. So the steps that I use might be totally different than the steps someone else uses, which might be a little bit different just here and there. So it doesn't really work to provide a really specific how-to. Most webcams come with built-in software for recording a video. Once you've got that file, you can pretty much plug it right into Blackboard. You'll see that within the discussion board editor, there's a little icon for attaching video, and that's pretty much what you can use. If you're familiar with YouTube, that's how I do my videos. I record them, upload the file, and it gives you the HTML code that you can embed right into Blackboard. Again, if you've never done it before, it's actually a great opportunity to learn. And if you can do one, you can do a zillion, right? It's only complicated when you don't know how to do it, which is one of those really obvious things, but things we kind of forget too. Okay, back to our course then. On to Unit 2. Make sure you check your grade then for Unit 1. If things didn't turn out as well as you'd hoped, there's two obvious things to check. One, did you do it on time? That's an easy one. And two, did you follow the directions? Especially for those kinds of assignments where you're just introducing yourself, that's pretty much all I'm looking for. On time, follow the directions. So did you include a picture on your page as opposed to an attached file? Did you post and reply in the discussion board? And beyond that, I'm looking for, a minimal investment of effort, clearly. So something last minute that you just kind of hurriedly typed, that's not really going to cut it. But primarily, I'm looking for on time and fulfilling the basic requirements. That kind of goes for the entirety of the course, but is a good little check here right at the start. If you didn't get full points, is it just a matter of not reading carefully, which is, I suppose, a good lesson to learn early on. Anyway, on to Unit 2. If you have any questions, be in touch with me, and I'll talk to everybody soon.